So don't fuss with this until you need to hit stop.
Will not
ready?
touch.
Thanks,
Yeah.
guys.
Is everybody in the right place? We got our title up now. Yay, title. Yes. Responsive design. Prototyping.
Oh,
That was awesome.
It's in the back. Where the guy got right here, it fell down below the apron on the back. You unplugged it.
Please hold. Too many wires.
While they're doing that, who's in the audience? How many developers do we have? PHP folks. Front end devs.
There we go.
Nice. IAs. I'm an IA. Can I get those hands high? Designers. Awesome. And project managers. Content strategists. Hire. You guys are so important. All right. Get this up.
Where's the guy?
Probably shouldn't do that around cords anymore.
So you plug this back?
Yeah, plug that back.
I'm afraid to just push a button on it. Push a button. All right.
Doing it. Not that one.
Not that one.
I would click.
Okay.
Press it.
He said he'd come back in like 3 minutes if it wasn't working, so it's been about 2.
Thank you.
What came on?
Just a power cord. Unplug and plug your machine back in again.
Me?
No, 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 no. You can do the introduction of us.
Yeah. So, we were going to start with introductions. I'm Brian Verhoeven. I work for Forum 1 Communications. I'm the Director of User Experience. Hey! Then we can go to the slide and you can
Not
see
yet.
Why not?
I'm working on it. All right.
People are ready.
There we go.
Yay!
Now, you're supposed to introduce
Oh, I
yourself
am.
now.
I'm the guy that unplugs things when presentations start. I'm the interactive art director at Forum 1. Been there for about 2 years, and before that, or 2.5 now. Before then, I was at Sapient for about a year, and PBS Kids for 7 years before then.
I'm the guy that fixes it when he unplugs it. And I'm the manager of interface engineering, which is what we call front-end developers. Sorry. That's what we call front-end developers, interface engineers. I manage them, and I've been with Forum 1 for 9 years.
Cool. So a little bit about Forum 1. We're about 62 people, some talented designers, IAs, content strategists, PMs, everything. We're full service. You can hit the next slide. We like to have fun. We're really proud of our company and what we've built there. You went a little far. Go back. We've done about 1,500 projects. Like I said, we're 62 staff. Our headquarters is just across the river in Alexandria, Del Rey. Great neighborhood. I live and work there. And then we also have an office in Seattle. And we actually work with probably, Andrew, 10 to 20% of our staff is fully remote, somewhere in there. And we're 100% open source and have been for a long time. And 90% of the work that we've been doing over the last at least 5 years has been Drupal. So we know it inside and out. Everybody kind of deals with Drupal on a daily basis. And starting in 2011, we decided that we needed to take responsive design very seriously because mobile traffic was shooting through the roof, and that became our default approach for advocacy sites, for applications and data sites, and also for very content-rich sites like the Center for Global Development and others. We do the full range. We have clients that really want to change the world, so we're working with them on all kinds of projects across the gamut of important issues. But in 2011, my brain broke. You see, what happened was we got really good at building fixed-width websites. We could put a lot of polish, a lot of shine on our designs because we were focused on that 960 grid. Oh, God, do I miss the 960 grid. And we focused a lot on design specifications. We wireframed and we wrote notes. And we did paper, and it was awesome. And I could give you the most glorious paper deck of wireframes you've ever seen. And then in 2011, I got really scared, and so did all the other IAs. We're like, what are we going to do? This doesn't work anymore. Because we're no longer building cars. We're building transformers. And the thing is, with the mobile traffic and the devices and the Android and tablet, and oh my, I don't even want to think about it. It's such a challenge to all these moving pieces and try to do that on paper. And what we did, we started making mistakes. We would put the blog title over on the right, and we were like, that's awesome. It looks great in our 960 grid in our paper. And then we'd look at it on the phone, and the blog title is below the body content. So we made mistakes. This is actually Bumblebee, the real Bumblebee from the movie. He crashed a few blocks from here when they were filming. Anybody remember that? It happened. So what are we going to do about it? How did we change our process? And that's what we're here to talk to you guys about. Over the last 2 years, it's been evolving, and we realized we needed new tools. We could no longer sit at our desk and work in OmniGraffle as IAs anymore. Luckily, our designers, our developers, our front-end folks, they got it intuitively. They're like, I know what to do! I know what to do! And that's pretty indicative of 4-in-1. So what we did...
You're going to have to be more forceful with your hand signals, Jeff.
What we did, we kept our discovery and design process. When we're working with our clients, we are a full-service firm, and we want to make sure that we understand the problem we're trying to solve. That's the most important thing we can do for anybody when we're working on a website, is understand what are their goals, what are the objectives, how are they going to measure success. And then we also want to understand their audiences. So their audiences, we'll interview them. What are their tasks? What are their needs? What are their motivations? And we got to mirror those two things together. We got to bring the goals and objectives of the organization and also meet where the audiences are coming. So we always do this. We're always out there interviewing and documenting. Then from there, the next thing we do is we sketch. And we're not sketching solutions at this point. We're working with folks to brainstorm, divergent thinking. What could the possibilities be? And we do it at mobile storyboard level to force folks to think, what has to be on this page? You only have 320 pixels by 400 pixels, give or take, depending on what phone. So we're just looking at what goes on the page, what has to be there. And we have clients and end users participate in this process. And then we go into this wonderful document that I love.
And I hate.
Yep. It's called a page description diagram. And I'm going to give a shout out to Dan Brown because it's his birthday and he invented this methodology. He's a local guy up in Bethesda. Basically what it is we force our clients to pick 3 things for each page that are important. These are the 3 things that have to be on this page, and they're the most important thing. If they only read these 3 things, interact with these 3 things, that's what it is. You get 3 more, and then you get the rest. And what that's doing is it's helping us understand what those priorities are, so when we do move to the responsive site, and it's on a mobile, it should be that these 3 things are the first 3 things that you see at the top. They move over, and you're like, okay, I got it. And that helps us make decisions. We're not talking about layout at all at this point. This is still discovery and direction setting. So we want to reference this throughout the whole project.
Can I interject?
Yes.
So the reason I hate this is this is where our process started to change. Actually, working with WDG last year at Createathon DC, we did a quick site for Phoenix Bikes. It's a co-op. It's awesome. Brian and I were working out some sites for responsive, and he just gave me this. And he was like, here, make a site.
I told him I was going to change up the process.
And I didn't know what to do. I kid you not, I stared at my screen for a week. Because I was like, all I wanted to do was rearrange boxes. And then I went to him and I said, all I do is rearrange boxes. And he says that's what IAs used to do all the time. You know, making wireframes and stuff like that came very naturally to some of our team, but not to others. So we still needed to have that connection between this and sometimes when it gets to the design stage. So we started rethinking stuff again.
And we've been using this for about a year-ish on most projects. Content administrators get this. They're like, yes, that's what I need to communicate. So it's been very helpful for them. And what Mal was alluding to, the way that we work now is Agile. We switched about the same time from Waterfall to Agile. How many people Agile? Oh, wow. Only about half.
Oh.
Okay, cool. Well, this is the Agile Manifesto, and the reason that we work this way, we noticed a lot of sessions at CapitalCamp this week about designers and developers playing nicely with each other. That sounds weird to me because I'm at Corey's desk all the time. He's a developer, I'm a designer. We have to work together. We have to be able to collaborate on the solutions because he's bringing ideas to the table, I'm bringing ideas to the table, and he understands the technology, but I understand the users. So we have to play nice, and that's why we adopted Agile. And basically what we're doing every 2 weeks after discovery is putting things in the backlog. We're saying, this is what we're going to focus on these 2 weeks. Anything else new still goes in the backlog, but we're not touching it for 2 weeks. We're prototyping the unknowns. And this is where we're used to wireframe. Like, okay, here's the unknown. This is what you guys will build. It doesn't work like that when we're talking about responsive design. What we're doing is, how is this piece of functionality actually going to work in browser? So now we prototype in browser. Confession, I don't know how to code. I can write basic HTML, and that was December. Now I know how to code because of this really cool tool that we're going to tell you about later, because I realized that we needed to experiment. We needed to take that blog post over on the right-hand side and have it fall underneath before we realized we were making mistakes. Because on paper, that was a great specification. We knew that we could build that. Yeah, it looks great at 960. What does it look like on a phone? Well, it looked terrible. And now Corey's going to talk a little bit about this tool that we built for prototyping.
Originally, I just had it say prototyping. I want to be excited, so prototyping.
Do you want me to run it?
Huh?
I got it.
We can run it.
That went really well last time. Yeah, I'll try it. Okay. So when we moved from a more waterfall approach to an agile approach, we were no longer going to have these giant stack of wireframes that we deliver at the end and that are all wrong. We needed to do prototyping, and we needed a tool to do it in. So we started looking at all the available tools, and there are a lot of them. Some of them are more design-oriented and work kind of like Photoshop. Others more IA oriented. Some require a lot of coding knowledge. Some don't. As we were evaluating them, we realized that we had a very specific set of requirements for the tool we needed. We needed to allow fast sketching of ideas so we can get them down, hopefully as fast as we did the old wireframes, but preferably faster. We needed to show how elements respond in an actual environment, in this case the web. Some of the tools, you will lay out your desktop, say lay a article on the page, and then you click to go to tablet view or some other breakpoint, and you get the same thing, and you have to resize it. Can you hear me okay?
No.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I will try to project. Some of the tools, you place something on the page, and then you would go to a different responsive size, and you get the exact same object at the exact same width, and you have to manually change the size of it and adjust it how you want it. That's not what we were looking for. We were looking for something where you put the object on the page, and when you resize your window, you see how it's naturally going to respond. So we could find problems like the page title being suddenly underneath the body of the article. It needed to support A and B testing so that we could create a page, and if we came up with a new idea, we could very quickly make a copy of it, make a small change, and then compare them. And it needed to be able to be iterated upon so that as these new ideas came up, we could very quickly add them in and then get them in front of clients fast. We looked at all the tools, and none of them perfectly fit what we were looking for and into our process, so ultimately what we decided to do was, and I left one off.
Oh.
The most important one. I left off, and that's why I hit it and was going to bring it in. It had to be used by the entire team. Some of them require a lot of coding knowledge or learning their special tags and things. We need it to be able to be used by designers, by IAs, even by project managers. None of them could do all of this exactly the way we wanted, so we ended up creating one, and we call it Prody. It's in beta right now, but you can sign up at the website and get it for free and play around with it and tell me what's wrong with it, and I will try to fix it. So what is Prody? It's based on our typical responsive approach, which is what I'm going to talk about in a minute, but the basic idea is a page created in Prody will behave out of the box the same way a page created in our Drupal theme would. It's created with core web technologies. There's nothing in it that is not just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. It has largely replaced wireframing in our process at this point. And when we came up with the name, I didn't expect this, but now you can hear people around the office saying, hey, will you prody me that? Or will you show me that prody you did last week? It comes with a library of basic design patterns built in. These are things at the component level, like a page title or a newsletter sign-up form. It also has page designs, like you can instantly create a blog detail page or a contact us page, and then start modifying it as you go along. And it can be used whether or not you're a coder or not. It's all drag and drop, point and click. If you know HTML and CSS, you can edit these things and get straight into their code and modify them to your heart's content, but that is not necessary to use it. So now we're going to talk about what I said. What is our baseline technical approach? It involves breakpoints. And the reason I chose this image is because we've recently moved over to SAS, and there's a module for SAS called Breakpoint. And every time I go to their webpage, they have wonderful information, but every heading has a different picture of Patrick Swayze or Keanu Reeves, and they're animated GIFs, and they're all doing very silly things. And so now every time I think of the word breakpoint, I think of them, which may not be the greatest thing.
It's awesome.
So this is sort of a simplified version of what our basic approach is. Mobile first, and then the breakpoint second. Each of the responsive sizes that we're designed for gets an individual file, but they're not mutually exclusive. So the metaphor I always use with Mal is it's like a wedding cake. The small file gets loaded first, and that has all your typography and colors and basic design elements and everything you need for the mobile site. If you hit the breakpoint for tablet, the medium file gets loaded after it, and they add together to create the tablet experience. The only thing in the medium CSS file are the things that are different between the mobile and tablet. And then finally, at the desktop size, you get the large file as well, 1, 2, 3, and there's usually very little CSS in that file. It's mainly just changing widths of a few things. We recently, this is all based on the Omega 3 theme, if you're familiar with it. We've recently moved away from that and are now using our own theme, but it still follows the same basic approach, although it's in SAS and uses the breakpoint module and doesn't split things into files, but it still has this 1, 2, 3 approach, just done a little differently.
One of the things that's great about this approach that we found, that again we had to adapt our process for, thank you, Andrew, is I had this huge fear as a designer that suddenly I'm designing for infinite things. And to me, that freaked me right the crap out. Like, how am I, it's going to take me months to do the simplest thing. So Corey, when he started putting together Prody, said, yes, theoretically, and now the model we're adapting is a lot more fluid and you do a lot of items, but when you're prototyping ideas and you're demonstrating things to clients, you don't have to explain that. You don't have to think that way. Think small, medium, large. Don't even think phone. Don't think Apple versus Android. Think small, medium, large. And that instantly connected in my head. And a lot of our staff and a lot of our team are understanding the process more because of that. We're removing that technical barrier that a lot of folks dive into quickly these days. But that, again, it was a shift in process. Ignore the technicality of it for a while. Think small, medium, large.
Okay. So how do we use Prody? The first thing we use it for is creating wireframes and prototypes. This is not a screenshot. This is just an iframe where I've loaded a page from Prody, one of the output pages that you might show to a client.
What?
That's why I plugged the mouse in, because I just realized I was going to have to use the little key nub, and I'm not good at that. It has a slide out panel that's optional, but you can add some meta information to describe the page. And you can also instantly see the page at the different responsive sizes just by clicking these buttons to see how the layout changes in real time. And there are things built in, like the main menu. As soon as you add it to the page, at the small size, it collapses to a little menu button at the top, which is sort of our baseline approach. We've done other things, but that's what we do most typically. Sort of works like this. And you can also add notes to the page if you needed to communicate things to other team members or the client about how specific areas need to behave at different responsive sizes, or what their purpose is, or how to code them, or what you were thinking. We also use Prodi for technical tests and proof of concepts. This is part of a PSD for a homepage design with a feature area. When you hover over these feature articles and their images, the idea was that they sort of louder. Sorry. The idea was they sort of grow and come at you a little bit, and that the description of the article would slide up. There was a lot of discussion about whether this should be done in Flash or JavaScript or however. I thought we could do it in just CSS3, so I created a page to test that. Thank you. And this is it. I have miniature schnauzers at home, so I always use schnauzers in my mock-ups. This is just another Prodi page, just HTML and CSS, nothing else, and this actually works. It lacks some of the subtlety of the design, like the blue background change, but it gets the basic idea of it scaling out at you and the thing sliding up, and I was able to send this to the developer, and he just copied the CSS right out of it and dropped it into his module and was ready to go. He had to tweak it after that, of course, and he got rid of the dog, unfortunately. So we also use it for style guides and designy, sort of fonty, colory things.
Oh, designy, fonty, colory things.
That's Mal's domain, so I'm going to let him talk about that a little bit.
Here.
Just point at me.
I will. I'll point very dramatically. So one of the things with style guides and stuff like that, we've seen mentioned a couple of times today, style tiles. Samantha Warren in Phase 2 kind of popularized the term a lot. Also been called mood boards and anything, UX guides, whatever you want to call them. What we saw an advantage of with Prodi from a design standpoint is once we get that basic look and feel down, getting right into prototyping, typography, fonty, colory things, and 80% of the bits that make up a web page. What that does, it lets us get to the 20% that makes all of our websites special and unique little snowflakes. Fonts have headers and text and links and buttons and all those things. So let's get those done. Let's get those fleshed out with Prodi, with HTML and CSS. So again, what it did to change some of our process, at Form 1, the interactive design team, we just are currently, subtle hint that we're hiring, and have wonderful designers on staff. We don't expect everybody to walk in the door and know how to do HTML and CSS. But what we realized through our process, like Brian mentioned, he couldn't code at all, is that we can teach people how to do it in a real world example. I don't know how many of y'all, what was the designer or the developer quota of the room? Low, high? Anybody here used to work with Flash? There's this very famous thing. Everyone's like groaning. There was a red bouncy ball that was like, make this ball bounce, and you know Flash. And then you make that ball bounce, and you're like, what the hell did I just make? It's the same principle with HTML and CSS. So if one of our designers or IAs or project officers are on a product, we can say, here's the mood board, here's the style tile we made, start putting it into HTML and CSS. It's very basic, very clean, and very reusable, this part. Corey's team can take out that CSS, drop it into a theme, be it the Omega theme that we use, the variation of it, or another one, and they can start reusing it and clean it up and make it fit their processes better, but we're helping things move in that agile process, and we're learning. So I did mention very smallly that part is reusable. Prodi and prototyping in our process, and this helped a lot of problems, is not meant to create clean, perfect, beautiful code that suddenly you have a website. No one used to do that with those big stacks of PDFs that we all sweated over and then they just went in the garbage at the end of a product. We visualize prototyping the same way. If we can reuse things, awesome, great. That's an added benefit. But the point is to get the solution across a little quicker and a little more efficiently so folks like Gina Holloway, one of our developers, or Corey, or myself can understand that idea better. This is a full-blown design comp that I made in Prodi. I do know HTML and CSS and JavaScript and all the great stuff because I love it. It is not for the faint of heart, so we're just framing expectations in our process. Prody is open source. You can crack open the Firefox extension that it is and go all the way down to the nitty-gritty and see how every little bit of it works. So more power to you if you go download it and you want to do it, but don't come whining to me when you don't have perfect code, because I told you it's not supposed to do that. But you can, and it's awesome. Next. The most important thing is it let us start testing. On the left, this is actual user testing we've done with paper prototypes. We call everything prototypes now. Homepage comps or homepage prototypes. It really helps the conversation. On the right is an equivalent of stuff she was testing in a quick, I'm talking 1 hour in the morning, dragging patterns over that are pretty common based on both Drupal modules, work that the UX world has been doing. Like, we're not reinventing the wheel here. But we put that in front of them, and I guarantee the results you get here are going to be better than the results you get there. It's a website. It's not abstract in somebody's head anymore. And we're actually integrating patterns based off of Drupal. So then we're not, someone like me is going in and redesigning the wheel when Drupal has a phenomenal module or a phenomenal pattern that can be used. Why do I need to redo that if we don't have to? Then we can continue, much like with the style elements, to focus on the stuff that matters.
Amen.
I like this pointing. This is fun. Okay, so that was kind of the quick overview. This part on Here There Be Dragons is just some snippets of stuff we ran into continually that would create those car wrecks that we saw at the beginning. That always would, quite transparently, affect some budget, affect some time, and give us headaches. The most important thing is responsive design can never be an afterthought. Don't think of it like a feature. Don't think of it like this thing, oh, we're just going to make it responsive at the end because it's a website. No. This is a website we did for the Defense and Veterans Brain Injury Center. I always have to look at what the title is because I call it DivBIC, the abbreviation. This was a project with a very small part of the Department of Defense whose audience goals are to serve service men and women who have serious head injury, both physical and mental. They're a phenomenal group of people. I love them to death. We designed it, we were moving along, we were working through the agile process, prioritizing items, features, things like how to do audience-centric navigation, how important it is to find a location, those types of things. And as we were sorting it, literally sorting it, because we use a program called Redmine, responsive design was getting bumped down the list. Like it was a feature, like it was a rotator that you put on your homepage. Towards the end of the project, suddenly that became more important. So we're like, oh, we'll just reprioritize it up. Now in our theme, there's some native, or in the sub-theme we built off of Omega, there's some native responsive bits to it. So this is what it looked like. It's responsive. I mean, so we all had some headaches, like from a IA, ID, and IE standpoint. We're suddenly rebuilding things. We're fixing stuff that was positioned a certain way. My stupid little ribbon that I designed didn't even work, so I had to figure out, oh, I have to make 3 images for that. Durr. All these things that came at the end of the project and create a lot of very tough conversations.
And stress.
That was not fun. So if you get nothing else out of this rambliness that's going on in this time, never think of it as an afterthought. These are some more detail level things. Large images, run into every time. Everyone loves the web right now with your full screen images, especially me as a designer. Give me a great image, I'll give you a beautiful website. But it's not fair. It's truly not fair to someone looking at it on a mobile device, on a tablet device, or at a conference where maybe the Wi-Fi isn't working quite as well, to download those large images even on your phone. Don't make the assumption that everyone's got that phone that can do it. That's not fair. It's not fair to our users. We are still working through the best ways to do this, and there's lots of blog posts, lots of different ways, responsive images. There's JS, JavaScript ways to do it. Hopefully, actually, the HTML5 spec, or HTML spec will actually be introducing attributes that let you put in your image tags different images for different sizes. One of the things we are looking at right now is it's called the Borealis module. We're starting to experiment with it. It seems to fit nicely into our workflow. If you notice, also a theme of the talk is just stuff that's working for us. But we're still experimenting with it. No one has solved the problem truly yet. But we're getting there. Tables. A lot of our clients, a lot of what we do are huge data-driven organizations. It's part of our mission to get data with our clients, with our organizations out there to the world in a way that everybody can see it and digest it. Some days, that's a table. And that is semantically correct because that's how data should be displayed. That's why tables came into existence. They are not responsive because y'all like really long numbers and certain or really long words that just don't break quite correctly. Again, there's a module I think called sliding tables. Notice I keep looking at Corey for this part.
I don't remember the name of it.
We don't remember the name. It's something like sliding tables where it actually does provide some additional functionality to your table. So on a phone you can slide back and forth, you can move up and down, do things like that. Just another one of those things to try when you're working with folks, identify that content early. Set their expectations. This might not be truly responsive. Let's see what we can do to display this data in a different way to get the same point across. That holds true for also embedded content. Again, we try to find ways that people have done this in really great ways. Tableau is a really nice data visualization tool. We worked with a CGAP. I can't remember what the abbreviation stands for right now. And we use a lot of their data and got it into Tableau. It's beautiful. Does not work on mobile phones. And Tableau says they don't, so we say they don't. And you set that expectation. Scribed, a great way to look at embedded large documents on screen. Again, has issues at mobile size. Large document files, readers that you need to do it. And honestly, still, videos aren't perfect. A lot of HTML5 video players kind of handle it pretty nicely, but even those aren't great. So frame those expectations at the beginning. Identify that video content. That way, when you're prioritizing what's important, you can keep saying, let's look at these videos. Let's look at Scribed. And someone like me as a designer can start trying to design solutions. Maybe there are different ways to send people to the site that hosts the video. Maybe that's better than an embedded one. All kinds of options.
Well, we have some JavaScript solutions to resize them, but you have to implement those.
Yeah, we do. You're right. We do have actually, because Corey's a genius. It does JavaScript work to make videos dynamically resized and even make carousels. The touch carousels dynamically resized. But that's overhead. No from the beginning.
You seen Fitbits?
Yeah.
That's the one I'm thinking of.
That's the one he's thinking of.
Okay.
Yep. Site navigation. Brad Frost, I want to give, again, much like we did with Dan earlier, credit where credit is due. He has a phenomenal aggregation of responsive nav design patterns. You would think, oh, it's site navigation on a website. Yeah, we'll get it to work. It's the biggest pain in the butt. Like, if you have a lot of links, if you stack them really tall, it looks horrible. Or if you have just 4, you got to figure out how to make them 44 pixels high per Apple's recommendations in a design process, which makes you change your design. We have defaulted to the hamburger menu. Hamburger. You see it often, the 3 little lines kind of stacked. You touch it, exposes your menu. It just works for, again, 80% of our situations. Then if we have to find a new one, at the 20%, we invest that time in it. Right here is the hide and cry. This about 2 years ago, and still today, Best Buy does this. You go to their responsive site and stuff vanishes. That's not fair. Who says because you're looking at it on a phone or a lap or on a, what if you're looking at it on a Chromebook that happens to have smaller resolution? Oh, you don't get to see today's deal, sucker. You get to see dishwashers. No. And if you are doing this, you better have a good reason. I got to work in my art history class into a presentation at Heck. Device fracturing. Heads up with it. This is where the wonderful Apple-Android debate in some circles tends to rear its head. Sorry, With Apple, it created a stable baseline for us to start from, the iPhone and the iPad. Now, when Retina displays started becoming more prevalent, that is a whole other ball of wax that made me angry, because that made images a lot of fun. But it creates a baseline, and that's the key thing. For us, those Apple devices, a Kindle Fire, and we do have an Android something.
S3.
S3, thank you, sir. That is our baseline that we say, here's where we're starting. We're going to test our responsive designs on this. But you communicate early if there are other ones. A really great example we had is a phone that ran Android 2.3 with a specific browser. It might have been Dolphin. And there was one bug in that operating system, in that browser, and that was our main point of contact's phone.
Yeah.
Then what happens there is you enter in that cycle where you're fixing bugs that might not be prevalent. Make it clear. It's not saying that that's unimportant. That's not the case. Like, of course, the person whose primary job is to look at the website, you need to have it work. Make sure that's early and often. You create that baseline and that it's really solid. Because again, at the end, you're just retrofitting. Yes. Hi.
I just want to mention here that there is a device lab opening up in DC in the next month or two, and Canvas is going to host it.
Nice. Everybody, did anyone sort of hear that? There's a device lab opening up in DC, which would be great. You should tweet that to like at CapitalCamp DC so everybody can get it.
So what's a device lab?
Lots of phones, lots of computers, lots of iPads. So your shop, wherever you work, you as freelancer, you as small shop, you as large shop, doesn't necessarily have to buy them all, because that is a chunk of change. Yeah.
Browserstack.com also has some good emulators for the devices. They have all the browsers you could possibly want, but quite a few emulators for Android and iPhone devices, iOS devices. Oh, ready.
So, sweet. We have time for questions. There we go. Really, we wanted to end with that Here There Be Dragon parts, because that usually is what starts spurring people's questions, or comments like there's a device lab, or comments like have we heard of the Fitbids, and all those kinds of things. Up here is a sea of Twitter handles as well. That's a lot of them. Form one, that's where we work. That's where we're hiring wonderful folks. Prototype is our specific Twitter handle for Prody. You're looking at the 3 people that are behind the scenes at Prototype. So if you send us questions or your beta sign up isn't working, give us some time. We promise we saw it, but sometimes we have work to do. All the time. Because Prody's a passion of love for us. So it takes us a little bit to respond. And below, that's Brian. That's Corey. That's myself. Again, feel free after today. I want to hear your questions now, but tweet at any of us, and we'll get back to you. But go, questions. Yes.
I also just wanted to mention a really cool thing. You were talking about the style guide.
Uh-huh.
There's a really great style guide module. So if you're building a Drupal site, the style guide module that will create a style guide page that's already listed like every features, headers,
Awesome.
images, all that stuff. One big long page.
I will go look at that.
We use it.
It's called Stop It. Oh, we do use it? We use it. That's probably what that's based off of.
But these style guides are being created before we've started development on the site usually.
Yeah,
Once we drop this code in, you can see it on that style guide.
So it plays nicely.
What's the module?
It's called Style Guide. I'm going to go to the back and then to the front. So right next to Andrew, right there.
Question. So how do you go from the prototype to the last prototype to the actual development of the site? Is there anything you can do?
Repeat the question.
So he's asking how do we go from the prototypes that we make in whatever Prody or whatever we end up making them in to development. CSS is most commonly carried over. That tends to be the thing. We're dirty with our prototypes. Sometimes it's a screenshot of something that we've drawn in paper on the iPad and we drop it into Prody and then use some CSS to make that responsive. So there's actually very little that goes from the prototypes you make strictly into development. What's happening is it makes the conversation happen sooner. So that's what gets carried forward development. We do not believe in walled gardens. at Form 1. I will get asked questions about kerning from one of our technical leads, Norman. I will ask him about modules. I'll ask Corey about CSS. He'll tell me about JavaScript, about colors. Dan Muard, who spoke earlier today on EPA, is an accessibility genius. He'll help me with color contrast. And by doing the prototypes, those conversations are happening. And that's the goal with us. If stuff gets carried over again, all the better for it. But if the conversation isn't happening, that's when we know something's wrong.
The other thing I'd add, we don't prototype everything, so there's standard functionality that we've probably built 1,500 times, because that's how many projects we've done. Like blog, we know how to do a blog. Get it in Drupal, stand it up, and that's our prototype.
Yeah.
That's the 2-week sprint. We do that. We're prototyping for the things that we don't know. It's our assumption that this meets the requirements. Now let's validate that. We don't prototype everything.
Yeah, a lot of stuff. Resource library is another great case. Filtering we use Solar, so we just do that in Drupal.
Do you have a particular theme that you find yourself using often?
Can answer that one.
Loud.
When we started doing responsive design, we started using the Omega 3 theme that has a very baseline approach with this fluid grid at mobile, and then the 2 breakpoints for tablet and desktop. And we used that for a while. Just recently, we've dropped that because Omega 4 is so different than Omega 3. We just decided to roll our own theme. And so that's what we're doing. It's all SAS and Compass and everything. But it follows the same approach with those 3 breakpoints to start with, but you can throw them away or modify them as you need.
For folks who don't have the capacity or interest to roll their own, did you offer any guidance going forward in the next couple of years?
Are we putting ours up?
Well, when we're done with ours and we put it out, you can use ours. We always abbreviate our team as F1 UX, Form 1 UX, but when you type that out, it kind of looks like Flux. So we're going to name it the Flux Capacitor, I think. So. But Omega 3 has been my favorite theme at this point, and it's very easy to start with.
That was actually what modifications that you had mentioned that you used Omega? I was just going to ask you.
What modifications we made? We created a new grid that was a little wider because theirs is, it says it's 960, but it has margins on the side, so it's really 940. So we made one that's, the actual content area is 980. We added in some of the stuff like the mobile menu button that automatically collapses the main menu and works with normal menus or Superfish. And we sassified it. That was a big thing, I guess.
It's sassy.
Sassy.
What is the advantage on adding this process of SAS versus what you use normally as just CSS style? What is the great stuff in the SAS?
Yeah, I was very reluctant to move to SAS when I first heard about it. It just seemed like a lot of learning for very little gain, and then I played with it for about 2 minutes, and I was like, I'm never doing anything else.
A little faster, variables, things like that make large stuff that took us a long time to type out and do. It's very similar to prototyping. You get that 80% done, and then you can focus your development and your CSS stuff on the.
It's much easier to compartmentalize stuff. Variables, nesting tags is the most beautiful thing in the world. And there's one other big one that I was about to say. Oh, the grid. God, the grid in Omega is about this long. It's probably 1,200 lines of code for all the different grids. In our theme now, it's this. It's 8 lines.
There was a question in the way back,
Yeah.
I thought.
There definitely was.
There was a hand up in the very back. Is it gone? Is it answered? Oh, there we go. Okay, she asked what's the benefit of using Prototype versus Zerp Foundation. That's up to you to decide. One of the big things here, and Corey and I were talking about this before, we just wanted to show that part of our process was nothing did what we needed, so we built Proti. If Foundation works for you, if Blocks works for you, if Hype works for you and your team, use it. It's whatever gets that conversation started better. The one thing that we do like about Proti a little bit more than other ones is that its heart is quick and dirty prototyping. Some of the other ones had a lot of overhead on them, and we decided to just narrow in and focus this one thing that we need to get done. So it's a little lighter and a little quicker. But if you want to use Foundation, do it. as long as you're prototyping in the course of the conversation.
I think the biggest benefit is for folks like the project managers, information architects like myself, who are very afraid of going to Git or anything else. I can drag and drop a wireframe in 15 minutes. I like a stack, and it's clickable, and all I have to do is just type in the URL to link the pages together. So for me, that's the benefit. Also, we work pretty hard to put about 30-page patterns in there that are based on Drupal. And the sites that we do over and over again, so I can get the baseline site up in hours and be like, okay, this is kind of what we're thinking. How far off are we?
Yeah, as we've been working on Pretty for about a year, and one of the things now is this just happened with a project. One of the project managers has a good sense of IA and wanted to get into it more. He needed to do some usability testing, so in the morning, he opened up Prody, drug a bunch of blocks in like header, footer, links, put them up, put it in Loop 11, it's a usability testing service so you can actually frame a website, got the task done, got results back a day later. This was from a conversation they had the day before. So he didn't have that barrier of entry that sometimes happens with ones like Foundation and other code-based ones. So, seeing no more questions, right on time.
Yes.
Not to hold you up anymore, but there's beer. Please join us at Tonic. It's 4 to 6.